Just a bit of a follow-up on my Red 124 fuel tank saga. It's no coincidence that that fuel tank basically looked brand new when I installed it, and it now looks extremely rusty on the inside. And it's only been probably a year or a bit over a year of driving that car, and not that much. And the other thing is the fuel goes stale in that fuel tank extremely quickly, and I know the reason for this now. Originally, I didn't pay too much attention to it, but valve number 51 here is actually failed on my Red 124. The function of that valve is that it is supposed to allow a slight amount of pressure to build up in the fuel tank, and when the fuel tank cools down at the end of the day, or at any time during the day when the temperature drops and a vacuum forms in the tank, it should release that vacuum pretty much instantly. The specification for opening when there's a vacuum is only 1 to 16 millibar, which is basically nothing. But the holding pressure for the tank under normal operation is between 0.435 psi to 0.725 psi, or 30 to 50 millibar for the metric people. In the case of that valve failing in the fully closed position, there is still an emergency pressure release function in the fuel cap, and that opens between 1.45 psi to 4.35 psi, or 100 to 300 millibar, just to prevent the fuel tank exploding, obviously, or getting damaged due to an overpressure event. Now, in the case of my red car, valve number 51 has actually failed in the fully open position, so it's basically not doing anything at all. And there is therefore nothing between the fuel tank and the outside air, as shown here at 52/3, which is the vent to the outside world after the charcoal canister 52. The regeneration valve 53 and the solenoid valve Y58/1 is working on my red car, but that is not part of this fault. So yes, it is evacuating that charcoal canister. The ECU decides when to do that. That is working, but the fact of the matter is this valve has failed. It's basically just a straight through pipe, and the tank is basically open to the atmosphere. So that's allowing moist air into that tank basically on a daily basis. And that will be condensing in there, no doubt, and rusting the hell out of that fuel tank. And of course, without some pressure build-up, well, the fuel can go stale extremely quickly, because you don't store fuel with an open fuel cap, do you? Presumably, that would be the easily evaporated chemicals inside the fuel. It's all just disappearing out into the atmosphere. So you're ending up with very stale fuel very quickly. That's why the fuel that was in that tank when I had all of my drummers didn't even smell like fuel anymore when it was removed. It just smelled like straight varnish after a very short period of time, and I was looking for reasons as to why, and I was blaming the fuel retailer and everyone except the real culprit. I'll show you what the new valve looks like. I have a couple of them on the way. I'm not keen on pressurizing my fuel tank with air at the moment, because that's extremely dangerous. I'll probably have to wait for a warm day to see if it's actually building up pressure on my other two cars, but I know absolutely that valve has failed on red. Just a reminder as to where it is installed on the 124, directly underneath the fuel tank. And this is the brand new one. I have a couple of these on the way. They are used in numerous vehicles throughout the years, not just the 124, and they were used up to a surprisingly recent date. Now, bear in mind, this is the charcoal canister version. There is also a version that is just completely open at the bottom for countries that didn't require evaporative emissions capture in the charcoal canister. We're not in one of those markets, so we did have these valves. And I'll put the part number here for you to see. And just out of interest, this is my 210. It is 6 degrees Celsius, so I cannot even demonstrate what a normal system sounds like. Unfortunately, it's too cold.